How SpaceX's Starship will handle life support. Life in space is restricted due to the unavailability of life support. One of the drawbacks of life in space is this unavailability. Without the basic necessities of life, such as the air we breathe, one cannot function. Thus, measures need to be put in place in order to support life beyond the realms of the Earth. Today we'll be talking about the various ways SpaceX has implemented that'll handle life support on its up-and-coming state-of-the-art Starship. Life support on the Starship is integral in its quest to reach Mars. How has SpaceX coped with the various issues revolving around life support? Have they put adequate measures in place? Well, stick around to the end as we answer these intriguing questions. Without further ado, let's begin the video. First things first, let us talk about the spaceship itself. The SpaceX Starship is a behemoth, measuring 120 meters in height and weighing 5,000 tons. It is objectively enormous while holding the maximum payload. According to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's 2016 Starship proposal, the vehicle will be able to carry up to 200 people per flight. That's astounding, especially considering Starship's capacity of 200 passengers puts it on par with some of today's sophisticated trains. While the Starship is not yet finished, it is approximately the same size as it will be when completed. But what does SpaceX intend to do with all of this space? I mean, you can throw some satellites in there for a few Starlink flights, but what about humans? How much space can Starship hold for the 100 to 200 people SpaceX expects to bring on board? That's why we've come to investigate. So without further ado, today we'll be learning about the Starship interiors that are required to maintain life on board. Private cabins, huge shared areas, centralized storage, solar storm shelters, and a viewing gallery are all part of the Starship crew design, according to SpaceX. Most crucially, SpaceX will have a dedicated Starship crew arrangement, which means things could be a lot cozier than expected. Consider the difference between storing 100 people aboard a spaceship with everything built for people and half space crammed with commercial things. I mean, only the payload volume is over 1,100 cubic meters. In comparison, a Boeing 747 has an interior space of 876 cubic meters and 450 seats. While it may have appeared absurd at first to imply that a Starship might transport between 100 and 200 people into space, it is much easier to realize how quickly this could be accomplished. But of course, SpaceX's list of alternative rooms and arrangement options, beginning with private cabins, is also included. Again, individual rooms appear to be a no-go for a ship like Starship at first, especially because the closest we've ever gone is SpaceX's Dragon 2 capsule, which is only 9.3 cubic meters of pressurized volume, or 0.85% of the overall capacity of a Starship. So let's say there are 50 to 75 individual cabins, each with 2 to 3 people for a total of 100 to 225 people. The Starship would only employ 465 to 700 cubic meters of its cargo volume, despite the Dragon 2 capsule's overall capacity of 9.3 cubic meters. So that leaves 36 to 58% of the volume available for open spaces, extra shelters, restrooms, storage, life support, and other amenities. When it comes to cabin room, a lot isn't always taken into account, and these are surely included. Bathrooms are unquestionably necessary. In space, you don't wait until you land to use the restroom if you're going to remain there for weeks. We don't know whether there are public bathrooms or halls or individual room bathrooms. What we do know, however, is that they must all be connected and flow to waste management and water reclamation centers, where waste may be disposed of, and water can be filtered and reused. Furthermore, Musk would have to incorporate enough food within Starship storage, whether it be in the form of a central food bank, cafe, or rations for everyone during their stay on ship. It might go either way, given the amount of room left vacant on private cabins. Let's take a look at how general life support might function or even fit on a Starship. Fortunately, this is a topic that SpaceX has been looking into for some time. So although many people disregard life support until they need something basic, SpaceX is already looking into it. In fact, the corporation attempted to hire Starship medical engineers some time ago. There were 2 job postings, a medical engineer for the Starship and a radiation effects engineer. SpaceX defined the former as establishing operational medical systems protocols and technology built for use aboard Starship. The corporation advertised the radiation effects engineer role as involving the investigation, design, and testing of many technologies meant to prevent fluctuating radiation levels. Moreover, SpaceX also proposed collaborating with other development teams on protection. The most important takeaway is that SpaceX is now investing extensively in developing the greatest life support systems aboard. The most common application of pressurized space will most likely be for Starship life support. There's a lot involved in what's typically believed to be tied to breathing: air regulation, water oxygen, supply waste disposal, temperature control, pressure regulation, and even food supplies and rations. Life support, of course, is significantly more involved, including hundreds, if not thousands, of different components and small items that must all work together to keep the crew alive. It'll also need a lot of power, which means that even more of the usable space on Starship will be restricted to the essentials. After all, Starship will provide a totally pressurized volume, top-of-the-line waste disposal, water purification, and much more, in addition to human demands. As a result, the vehicle's whole volume will most likely be heavily utilized. However, because Starship will be dealing with hundreds of people living in open environments for weeks, if not months at a time, there is a rising case for using oxygen generation on board. Furthermore, the average human consumes 660 liters of oxygen every day, implying that SpaceX would require a significant amount of onboard oxygen or a powerful generator. Fortunately, the technology underpinning the International Space Station is oxygen generation, which is relatively small and easily utilized via an electrolysis process that separates water into hydrogen and oxygen. For years, the space station has been manufacturing oxygen. Fortunately, this procedure would also assist Starship with a few other support chores, including reclamation waste disposal and even fuel management. Additionally, astronauts can make water and methane by combining the freshly required hydrogen with the carbon dioxide emitted by each crewmate. This water can obviously be filtered and utilized for human consumption, with the methane possibly going towards Starship's methalox supply. However, this method isn't without flaws. Because there is still a significant disparity between demand and generation, SpaceX would have to devote some of its onboard volume to oxygen, water, and other life-sustaining supplies. However, that would most likely be kept in the centralized storage of Starships, or a separate compartment restricted to the general crew. Personal items, additional oxygen supplies, water sources, and literally anything else SpaceX wants on board might be stored in the centralized storage. With various communal rooms to choose from, it would likely function as a focal area for the onboard crewmates. Thus, this area will be of immense importance. Life support is something that should be given priority. It may seem that everything covered in this video is enough for human life to prosper beyond the realms of Earth, but folks, you gotta remember life support is the foundation for having a prosperous life outside Earth. You cannot risk life, so there's no room for error in its methodology. Thus, any more advancements in the subject will further help SpaceX achieve its target of life on Mars. And by the look of it, they're not that far. One needs to comprehend the possibilities that are available to him in terms of space travel. Issues such as life support should be dealt with urgently, as it is the key to the future of mankind. After removing such hurdles, only then can life prosper beyond the limits of Earth. So, what do you think of the ways SpaceX is implemented in order to handle life support? Doesn't it amaze you the technology behind this technology? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to watch more of our amazing videos, then stay tuned.